we got here? Money. It's all about money. All the history we could ever want is at our fingertips, but nobody ever looks into it. Nobody wants to listen to it. Even elections. I'm at the point, I'm pretty sure the winners are decided before we ever cast a vote. That's just the way it is. Our problem goes back to the birth of a man in 1743. His name was Bauer. B-A-U-E-R, Bauer. His dad was a moneylender. An accounting house. I'm not real sure what the accounting house is, but maybe that's what banks were called at one time. In 1760, this guy worked for a bank owned by the Oppenheimers in Germany. He rises through the ranks, becomes junior partner, and while he's there, he meets a man named General von Estorff. When his father died, he moved back home to take over his dad's business. And now he's got a contact, this general. By this time, this general has worked his way up into being an officer of the court for Prince William of Hanau. Not sure how to pronounce that. Hanau. Some of the stuff, you just have to bear with me. This stuff is stuff that I've wrote 25 years ago, or over the past 25 years. So here we are. The chickens are coming home to roost, and we've got a big problem. Most of our law enforcement, although good people, they're not aware of this. What they're doing in their mind, everything that they do, every law they enforce, they believe in their heart they're doing right. They don't understand a lot of the stuff that they're doing is violating or infringing on every single constitutional right. You get pulled over for speeding. That should be the only subject. Get your information, give you a speeding ticket, be on your way. When they start asking where are you going, where are you coming from, you have anything in the car, that's starting to infringe on the Fourth Amendment. As the Constitution wasn't written needing anybody to interpret. It was written so anybody could understand it. Pretty plainly written. Alright, 1760, he goes back home, takes over his father's business. While he's there, he gets back in touch with this general, which is an officer of the court for Prince William. Bauer makes contact with this general to offer him coins and precious stones and stuff on a discount. Not because he likes him, but because he's setting his path for success. While he was doing business with him, his goal was to get to the prince, which he did. The prince was more than happy to get discounts on all this stuff. So he's slowly putting this prince in debt. Meanwhile, he gets the prince to get him in touch with other people, other nobles and whoever around. 1791, Bauer sets up a central bank in the United States. The United States granted him a charter. It's a 20-year charter, meaning every 20 years it had to be renewed. Most of the people were against the charter for a central bank, but they did it. But he worked it through Hamilton, which was a member of George Washington's cabinet, and the bank was to be called the Bank of the United States. 1811, the charter runs out, and it's not renewed. Andrew Jackson knows what kind of people they're dealing with. They don't want them there. Andrew Jackson says, if Congress has the power to issue paper money under the Constitution, it was given to them to use by themselves and not to be delegated to individuals or corporations. The charter holder, which is the banking cartel, this Bauer, tells Jackson that it will be renewed or the U.S. will find itself in a war. This was 1811. Anybody that remembers history in school, you have the War of 1812, which was on a couple of different fronts. A lot of people, anyway, beside the point. Jackson goes on to say Congress was a den of thieves and vipers, and he intended to rout them out. Bauer was then quoted as saying, "Teach those impudent Americans a lesson and bring them back to colonial status." Keep in mind, this guy's got power. By this time, he's got control of England, or he's gaining control of England. The intent of the War of 1812 was to break America completely and destroy it. So it could have easily been lost long before we was even born. 1815, the banking cartel began funding both sides of war between England and France. This is why every time the United States invades something, then we destroy it. Doesn't matter, and World War II included. This is why we end up rebuilding these countries. That is the deal. When governments borrow money from this banking cartel, part of the agreement is whichever side wins pays for the reconstruction. Bauer says, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man that controls Britain's money supply controls Britain, and I control the money supply." 1816, the U.S. bank cartel is renewed, the charter's renewed, and the only thing gained after refusing them a charter was the deaths of who knows how many thousands of U.S. and British troops. It's always young guys being pushed out by suits. They're expendable. 1827, a book is published revealing the war between England and France as orchestrated by the banking cartel. 1835, Andrew Jackson goes up against the bankers again and starts making U.S. deposits to Democrat banks instead of the banking cartel banks. Later, an assassination attempt was made, and ultimately there was 3 attempts on Jackson. All 3, of course, failed. 1837, the Bank of the U.S. is thrown out, which is the very beginning of the Civil War. The argument over what the war was over doesn't matter. He who wins the war writes the history. Most people are going to always believe it was slavery. It's a dead argument. It'll never get you anywhere. Forget it. Let it go. 1837. 1849, the cartel wife dies. Before her death, she's quoted as saying, "If my sons did not want wars, there would be none." Think about it. If her sons did not want war, there would be none. There's always a boogeyman. There's always another country to go get because a boogeyman's doing something. Doesn't matter how much peace is in the world, there will always be a boogeyman because this banking cartel wants control of another country, or they want to break citizens in the country, or they want control, they want to take things away, which now they're wanting any liberties we have, which, I mean, they've done a good job at stripping those. This is where law enforcement comes in. If they knew the history, they wouldn't enforce some of these laws. 1861, Lincoln prints money and the cartel is furious. 1863, cartel agent John D. Rockefeller is sent and establishes Standard Oil. 1865, Lincoln speaks of 2 great enemies, the Southern Army in front, the financial institution in the rear, and of the 2 great enemies, the rear is the greatest foe. The financial institution, Lincoln considered to be the greatest foe between the financial institution and the Confederacy. That's pretty serious. The problem with the United States printing their own money and being their own wealth, this banking cartel would have lost their power and control over world domination. Had the United States ever reached a point to where the wealth was built up enough to where we didn't have to borrow money from anywhere, and we were smart enough not to go to wars, there would have been nothing stopping the U.S. We'd have been There's no telling where we'd be today. 1881. President Garfield says, "Whoever controls the volume of money in our country is absolute master of industry and commerce and will determine inflation and depression." The depression, our recession, 1871, the U.S., this is a good one. 1871, the U.S. lost independence. A lot of people don't know that. 1871 was the beginning of the United States Incorporated, which means it is no longer of the people, by the people, for the people. In other words, we were sold out. 1891, British Labour leader is quoted as saying, "This blood-sucking crew has been the cause of untold mischief and misery in Europe during the present history and has piled up its prestigious wealth, chiefly through fomenting wars between states which ought not never to have quarreled." In the late 1880s, the bankers buy Reuters news or press. 1897, they form a Congress to meet in Munich, but first held their meetings in Switzerland, which is now considered the Bilderberg Group. Most people, when they hear Bilderberg Group, they close their ears off because of whatever reason. They don't want to know. Not wanting to know is how we end up where we are. Alright, I'm going to stop the video right there because I'm limited on my space on that, and I'll have to upload it and then reformat it and do another one. So, like anybody else, subscribe because I'll have a lot more stuff coming.